Welcome to the AdSense Flippers podcast. Are you sick and tired of gurus who have plenty of ideas but are short on substance? Worried that ebook you bought for $17.95 won't bring you the personal and financial freedom you long for? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others in their pursuit of niche profits without the bullshit. Straight from your hosts, Justin and Joe of AdSense Flippers.
Welcome to episode 8 of the AdSense Flippers podcast. I'm your host, Justin Cook, and I've got my business partner extraordinaire here, Joe Magnotti. What's going on?
Hey everybody, happy to be done with migrations.
Absolutely, dude. We got a great lineup for you today. First, we're going to go over some news and updates. Then we're going to get into the heart of this week's episode, which is all about AdSense units and AdSense layouts. So make sure to check that out. Finally, we're going to get into our ninja marketing tips, tricks, and our plans for the future. And we've got some today that will rock your socks if you're AdSense geeks like us. So let's go over the news and updates. First off, we'd like to thank the two people that gave us 5-star reviews in the last couple of days. We've got Michael. These guys give great, honest information about making AdSense sites. This is a must-read for internet marketers. Thank you, Michael. Second, we have G. Andrews, who specifically states they're a powerhouse team. They never shy from owning up to their mistakes. And I've listened to episodes more than once to get out every ounce of goodness. G. Andrews, you're the bomb. Thanks, buddy. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a really cool review. Justin didn't read the whole thing, but you really said some insightful stuff. I love it. Thanks.
Also, I'd like to thank Joe and the rest of the AdSense Flippers team for doing exactly 111 site transfers this month.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It took us about 2 to 3 weeks to get them all done, but we're done, and I'm very happy to have everything off my plate.
Next thing we want to talk about, we've mentioned it before, we've actually switched our hosting a bit on our niche sites. We went from GoDaddy hosting and we switched it over to HostGator. This is on Joe's recommendation. He thought it might be a bit faster, and he's got some data for you on the niche site. So what's up, buddy?
Well, we didn't switch all our old sites. I should make that clear. We just went ahead and put our new sites on HostGator. And the reason why was when I was doing migrations to customers over the last few months, I noticed HostGator had significant speed increase. And so this month we tried it out, and you have a little bit of data here for you. On average, our sites on GoDaddy take about 6.5 seconds to load. And on HostGator, they only take 3.4. So we improved the load time of the sites by almost half.
Yeah, dude, that's really good. And it's really important that you have fast sites when you have niche sites. One of the things that we're a bit embarrassed about right now is AdSense Flippers, man. What's our average load time right now?
15 seconds.
Yeah, dude, that's horrible. So we'll be switching our hosting for AdSense Flippers over to private, dedicated server in the near future so that we can get our speeds up there.
Yeah, some reasons that you might see that discuss system not work in the comments section of the blog is because the load time is so high. You just reload the page when that happens, because some days we've been as high as 60 seconds average load time, which is terrible.
Wow, dude, a minute to wait for the page to load. That's absolutely horrible. We'll get that fixed, guys.
Yeah, and just so you know, some really quick stats here. Worse than 8 seconds a load time is usually considered a failure. 5 to 8 seconds is okay. Less than 5 seconds is good. And less than 1.5 seconds is super duper awesome. You can't really do any better than that.
And we've got a good source for that. We'll link to that in the show notes. Next thing we want to talk about is a little bit, we get this all the time too. It's a question about our roller coaster income. Basically, the way that it works is we have a bunch of sites, right? And we can, let them build up some revenue, and then we can sell a bunch of them basically whenever we want. So we can increase cash flow at will. But our real trick, and your real trick if you're building out an AdSense empire as well, is watching how much your average site earns. Right? So there are two things for us, our metrics that we need to pay attention to. How much an average site earns over time, and our multiple that we get when we sell them, right? So if either of those changes, it will significantly change our cash flow, the value we're creating, that type of thing.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to keep track of these things if you're selling a lot of sites and moving a lot of sites, but put everything in a spreadsheet. You should get a roundabout number so that you have a good idea of where your sites are at.
One thing you can do, and we've noticed with our sites, is that we've sold off some of the top earners, and then we end up with a bunch of these really low-end earners. So our average site over time starts to look much worse. The best way to do is take a snapshot. So take a particular week or a particular month and don't do anything with those sites, and you can get kind of a rough idea on how much your sites make after 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, that type of thing.
So moving right along here, one of the things we're working on is an internal theme to use on our sites. We've noticed that there are some good things about ProSense and some good things about CTR Theme, but we kind of would like to see a mixture of those two. So we're developing a tool internally, and we're thinking that we'd like to offer it up to our readers and visitors to the site.
We're debating, most of our information's free, but we were thinking about whether we should add a price tag to this, and we may be able to add more features, or if it's not that expensive, we're able to develop it, get it running, and get everything we need, that we may just offer it up for free. It depends, but that is in the works, and we're working on it now. So know that we'll have a theme out there soon that you can take a look at and check out.
The AdSense Flippers Podcast.
So moving right into the heart of this week's episode, this is all about AdSense ad units and layouts. Before we even get started, I want to mention something. We're going to give as much data as we possibly can. We're going to cover CPC, CTR, clicks, RPM, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, the AdSense TOS keep us from giving exact numbers, so what we will do is give you comparisons of one versus another, different layouts, and how we found them to be effective. Another thing I wanted to mention is that this is going to be a bit more of a dry episode than you may have seen in the past. So if you're looking more on like partnerships or our thoughts on business or internet marketing, this isn't it. We're going to be covering ad layouts and the best position for your ads. A bit more boring and geeky stuff that we kind of dig into.
But if you're looking to build niche sites, it's important.
So let's start it off, buddy. What's an ad unit?
Well, an ad unit is going to be your basic building block of your AdSense account. Without it, you're not going to be able to use all the other cool features of AdSense.
And you actually have to create these inside of your AdSense account, and they can be customized to your site.
Yeah, one of the things we did when we first started building sites back in the early days of 2010 was we just took a theme, ProSense, and switched out the pub ID and switched in our pub ID, but didn't create our own ad units.
And that was my fault. I was a donk. I saw the pub ID. I said, I'll just put that in. We'll make some money. And we did at first.
Yeah, but the problem was that URL channels and all your custom channels can't collect the data that you need in order to find out what's doing best for you.
Yeah, if you don't know which site or which block is making you money, you're not going to be, later on your data's going to hurt. You're going to suffer for that, and you're not going to be able to figure out which ads are doing better.
So obviously we don't create ad units for every site, because that would get a little crazy. I mean, we have more than 1,100 sites right now. If we had to create four new ad units, we use 4 ad units on every site, man, we'd have to create a lot of ad units.
Yeah, that'd be 160 per week at 40 sites per week. That would be insane. You'd spend all day creating ad units.
Right. So instead, we group sites by month right now. And if you create a lot of sites, I really suggest that you do it this way. Either group them by time, by month, by week, by day, or by niche. However you want to do it, so that you can put those all into one custom channel.
And that helps us when we go back and look at our monthly stats. Okay, how did this ad unit do for all of the sites for this month? And it's not as individual as we'd like it. I mean, it'd be better data if it was individual, but that gets ridiculous anyway and extremely hard to read. You'd have so much data in AdSense that would be too confusing, actually.
Right. Another thing you got to keep in mind are your naming conventions for ad units. Because a lot of these things are just available from a pick list within your AdSense account, if you start naming them like Test 1 or Blue or something just out of the ordinary instead of a descriptive term, it's going to be very hard to go back and make reports because you're not going to remember which ad units are what.
Yeah, so we do things like January 336 ad unit, and that tells us it's the 336 unit for any of the sites in January.
Exactly. Yeah, and talking about sizes, you should stick to the most popular sizes recommended by Google. When you create new ad units within your AdSense account, you'll see that there are recommended most popular sizes, and these are the sizes that premium advertisers are probably going to use. Stuff like large rectangle, medium rectangle, leaderboard, skyscraper. Those 4 are going to be where you're going to find the most advertisers. If you don't use those 4 on your site, you can expect to get less than optimal results.
And this is especially important too when you talk about images that are going to be there, when you talk about rich text, when you talk about rich media ads. These are the ones that premium advertisers are putting out there. So if you want those to show, you're going to have to use the most common ad blocks.
Yeah, if you think about it, these premium advertisers they have a whole marketing team, right? They're doing a lot of testing on what looks the best. So they're not going to go out there and create a whole bunch of different ad sizes. They're going to create 1 or 2 different ad sizes, and they're going to use the most popular ad blocks.
Another thing to pay attention to or keep in mind is the style that you want to fit. Now, Google talks about 2 different ways you can do this. You can either make the ads blend into your site, which is mostly what we use, or you can also contrast, right? And I'll link to it in the show notes, but Google talks about using either one of these, and they can be effective. You either want your ads to stand out so people notice them more, or you want people to not really see ads and see content and be a bit of a blend.
So talk to us about interest-based ads, Justin. What does that mean?
Interest-based ads are basically this. You have someone that goes to your site and it's about blue running shoes. But previously they were looking up bank accounts, right? So on your blue running shoes site, there might be advertisements for bank accounts. Now, if you have a running shoe site and someone clicks on a bank account ad, you're more likely to get paid quite a bit more money. So interest-based ads basically follow anyone who's logged into their Google account around from site to site and will show ads that Google thinks is relevant to them based on their search history.
Now, it could also work vice versa. They could be interested in knitting, and they can get a knitting ad, and you could get 5 cents for that. So it could definitely hurt you as well, and it's something that you should look at turning on or off within your AdSense account. We generally leave it on.
So now that we talked a little bit about interest-based versus contextual ads, and we talked about text and image and rich media ads, I thought I'd give you some stats from our AdSense account, give you an idea how those line up and compare. Right now, we're getting about 88% of our ads are contextual, meaning they match the content on the site, and about 12% are interest-based, meaning someone's logged into their Google account and they're seeing ads based on previous searches.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me that only 12% are interest-based because most people are not logged into an account. Most people don't have a cookie available for Google to offer up interest-based advertisements. But these interest-based advertisements are probably, not all the time, but probably going to deliver a higher CPC based on what the customer was visiting before.
And when it comes to text versus image versus rich media, about 74% of our ads are text-based ads, 11% image, and we round it out with 5% for rich media, flash, and animated ads. So a huge majority comes from text, and that simply has to do with more ads being available via text.
Yeah, and that makes sense because the most basic advertising in AdWords is text-based ads. Most companies do that. But premium advertisers, those advertisers that are going to pay a lot more and therefore a lot higher CPCs to you, are going to use premium ads, image ads, rich media ads, flash or animated ads. Those are the kind of things that it takes a lot of money to develop, and that larger companies that are willing to pay our higher CPC are willing to develop. So even though it's a lower percentage of overall account, it probably accounts for a large percentage of our actual revenue.
Now you might see a lower CTR on rich media, on animated, on flash, but you'll generally see a higher CPC, as Joe was mentioning. So some people talk about whether or not you should turn those off. We recommend leaving them on in most cases. In very rare instances when people are smart priced or there are ads that are really outside of the context and you don't think that would deliver well for the advertiser, should you take them out. But 99% of the time you should leave them in. I mean, that's what Google's getting their 33, 34% for, right? Is to match up the ads with the searchers. So let them do their job.
Right, and I would say if you have a small number of sites, make more ad units and do more custom channels so you can actually test this and see what's most effective for you on your particular sites.
Okay, this second part we want to talk about was specifically ad layouts and strategies for when you're designing your page and putting your ads in. Now, there are an infinite number of ad layouts. We're not going to go over all of them or all the different particular places you can put your ads, but you'll find out that most of the themes built for AdSense stick with proven layouts. So CTR Theme, Heat Map Theme, ProSense Theme, and any number of the other AdSense ready layouts are going to have generally the most popular or the most favorite AdSense placements.
Yeah, and those themes use the maximum number of ad blocks, link units, and search boxes that you can according to AdSense terms of service. So you can get 3 ad blocks, 3 link units, and 2 search boxes per page. I mean, that's a lot of ads. I wouldn't recommend doing all those, but most themes provide some combination of that.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of instances, that would be too much, especially for only a little bit of content on the page. One thing to think about too is if your particular homepage has multiple posts on the homepage, you're going to need to remember that because the homepage is viewed as a page. So you're still only allowed 3 ad blocks, for example. So if you have an ad block that's visible in the first post, the second post, the third post, the fourth post down the page, that's now too much. Now, a lot of the themes will clean that up for you, but if you're the one doing it, it's definitely something to take a look at and make sure you're not breaking terms of service there.
So let's talk a little bit about Google's recent change with above the fold advertising.
Yeah, this was implemented a couple of weeks ago and specifically looks for sites where there is very little content above the fold. Doesn't look like a site that's showing much to you. It's really hard to get to the content, and the search team has said specifically they're going after those types of sites.
You know, we've been guilty of using the push down image option in CTR Theme, which allows you to use little image blocks in order to push down the content even further. But I would say in general, we try to use ad placements that have at least a little bit of content above the fold, because I do think that's important. But I should say, although I don't have any data to back this up, that I guess it's a small percentage of how impactful this change is in Google. You're not going to go from ranking number 1 to number 50 because you have a whole bunch of ads above the fold.
Yeah, if I remember right, this affected less than 1% of searches overall. So people would ask, well, how are your sites doing? How are they going? Everything's fine. We haven't seen any change whatsoever.
So talking a little bit about Google's heat map and how ads should be laid out on a page. Most people read left to right? Unless you're from another crazy country out there where everything goes right to left. Most people go left to right, and so your eyes naturally go from right to left when you read a web page.
Left to right. Right to left? Left to right, buddy. Yeah, left to right. So anyway, we're going to link to some images in the show notes that kind of show Google's heat map. There's a couple of heat maps. They have one for the SERP, or for the search engine results page, which shows kind of where people's eyeballs go. And then they have some for pages itself. And the one with the pages, you'll see that above the fold, left to right is the best place to put your ads. We also have nice ad layout that Google gives you and shows you which are the hot spots or hot zones for advertisements. And you should keep that in mind when placing your ads on your site. Next thing to talk about is the H1 title with the ad right below. We've had questions about this. Your H1 tag or your title for your post or your page is right at the top, and we generally put an ad block right below that. And people ask, is that bad? Is that okay? Completely acceptable. When Joe spoke to the AdSense rep, said it was aggressive but acceptable. The only exception to that would be is if your title was, hey, click here, or sponsored advertising, or make me some money with an arrow pointing to your ad. That wouldn't work.
Yeah, that brings up another interesting point. Like when you wrap text around an advertisement, that's allowed. But you do have to be careful not to overlap the ad in any way or to use deceptive text to try to trick people into clicking on your ad. You don't want to do anything like that.
A lot of times, most of the AdSense layouts are going to have 3 ad units, 1 to 2 link units, and at least 1 ad block above the fold. If you're going to put an ad block above the fold, we recommend the large rectangle or the medium-sized rectangle. That generally works best and has a ton of advertisers, so you have a better chance of getting a nice ad in there that pays well.
Right, so let's talk a little bit about the CTR theme channels that they have available, because specifically some of the testing we're going to cover in the next section of the podcast requires that you understand the 7 channels they have available. And we'll link to that in the show notes. We'll have a little image up there so you can actually see the physical layouts in CTR Theme if you're not familiar with it. But there are a number of ways in which CTR Theme allows you to lay out the page and manage your ad blocks.
Yeah, the specific CTR theme channels that you can look at are double stack left, roadblock layout, 336 left, 336 right, double stack right, bottom block layout, and 728 top. Now that's probably really confusing if you're listening to this in your car or something. Don't worry about it. Just check out the page and we'll show you what we're talking about. So getting right into the third section we wanted to talk to you about today is our hard data and testing. Now first, I want to explain the relationship between CTR, CPC, and RPM. Now basically RPM is revenue per 1,000 page views. So if that particular site had 1,000 page views, that's what your revenue would be. Now what that does is that's a combination of CTR and CPC. So that's going to be your best metric to compare one site to another or a site against itself based on ad layout. You don't want to look at only CPC. If you're getting a much higher CPC but your click-through rate went into the tank, you're not going to be making more money on the site.
Yeah, across the board RPM is always better because it allows you to say what would happen to this site if I scaled it up, if I just increased the traffic.
Now we've had some questions about how CTR Theme is doing versus ProSense, which we used previously, and I have to say across the board, ProSense wins in every test we've done.
And it's hard to say why. I mean, I don't really know why. I think the reason why is ProSense looks more boring. So when people come to the site, they say, oh, I don't want to go to this site, and they click the ad and they want to get off of it.
It sucks because I like a better looking site, and CTR Theme looks better, right? But unfortunately, ProSense works better. And for us, small margins make a big difference. When you're talking about 20 or 30% change in CTR and a 15% change in CPC, it makes a big difference across the grand scheme of things.
Right, and these are some of the reasons why we want to come up with our own custom theme to use internally, because this way we can develop it and tune it to exactly what works best for us.
Now, I'm going to go over and we're going to actually rank the different layouts for CTR Theme, give you an idea on like what's working, what isn't working for us. We're going to go through all 7. We're going to go from number 7 to number 1. I will say that number 7 through number 5 were only tested for about 45 days. When we realized that they were doing so much worse than number 1 through number 4, we dumped them completely and started rotating just number 1 through number 4.
And I wish I could share the actual stats with you guys. It would be very helpful, but unfortunately we can't, so we've just ranked them from worst to best.
One of the things we didn't do is we weren't able to take sites that had ProSense and then switch them to CTR Theme. So when we're comparing ProSense to the CTR Theme, we're comparing hundreds of sites on one and hundreds of sites on another, but they're not the same sites. Unfortunately, we could not do that, but it still gives you a relatively good or a rough comparison.
Yeah, we think it's statistically significant to compare them because of so many niches involved on both sides.
And the difference that we saw there was important enough for us to stand up and take notice. Anyway, for the CTR Theme ad layouts, at the bottom we had double stack right. Number 6 we had bottom block, and number 5 we had 728 top. Again, we didn't test those very thoroughly, only 45 days, and then we got the hell away from them because the other 4 were doing so much better.
Yeah, and if you think about it, number 7 and number 6, it makes sense that those are the worst layouts. They put either the blocks on the right, which most people start with the left, or they put the blocks on the bottom where most people are not going to see them.
So these next 4, we've done about 5 months of testing on, reviewed the data, and we can say pretty adamantly that this is the case, at least for us and in our niches. Number 4 was roadblock. That surprised me a bit. Roadblock is the one with the double ad blocks at the top. I mean, there's basically nothing but ads, right? And so my thought on that might have been that there are too many ads. If someone goes to the site and they see that, they go, oh, it's spam, or oh, there's no real content here, and they back out.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Justin. I mean, it would take more testing to be absolutely sure, but it makes sense.
And number 3 was double stack left. That's the one with the 2 ad blocks on top of each other with the content wrapped to the right. Now, if you look at the heat map theme, you'll see ads that are to the left tend to get clicked on a bit more. So it's not surprising that that one did well. Number 2 was the 336 block right. That's 1 ad block to the right with the content wrapped to the left. That's our number 2 performing site. And our number 1 performing site was 336 left. 1 336 block to the left with content wrapped to the right.
Yeah, and all these layouts are going to have a skyscraper ad as well to the left. So it makes sense that the number 1 layout is 336 left, because you basically have a skyscraper plus a large ad unit block to the left-hand side where most people start reading the site.
We just want to give you an idea on some of the ad layouts we've used, tried, and tested, and give you an idea on like what's been successful with us with CTR Theme. We have switched some of our sites back to where we're heading in the direction of ProSense, and then we are going to be working with our own theme here in the near future, and we'll definitely let you know how that goes. And the last section we want to talk about today is the do's and don'ts for ad units and layouts. We just want to give you some basic tips and tricks regarding units and layouts that I think you'll find useful with AdSense.
Yeah, first one is do look at RPM instead of CPC or CTR when comparing similar layouts. Very important, guys, because if you're looking at CPC or CTR exclusively, you're only getting half the picture.
And make sure you get enough data too. A lot of times we'll have one person tell us, oh, I'm getting 22% CTR, some crazy numbers, and it's on one site over like a period of like 3 days.
Yeah, and they only had like 100 page views. That's not really enough.
So make sure that you're looking at a very large sample and you'll get a better idea on like where you're really at. The next thing, do not compare RPM across different platforms. I see people making this mistake where they're comparing like their niche sites versus a forum, or their authority sites versus their niche sites, and it's simply not the same. Authority's gonna have better content, you're gonna have more people really digging into the content than you will with like a basic niche site. Forums are notoriously bad for AdSense, and they have to have a ton of page views. That's part of the point, is you have to have a forum that is on fire to make a good amount of money with AdSense. So comparing one to the other is not reasonable.
Yeah, the next one is don't put images next to ad blocks where the image lines up with the ad positioning. It can be near the ad block, but just make sure you're not trying to trick the user, or the user would be unconsciously tricked into clicking on your ad because of something within the image or the text.
Or confused. If there are 3 text ads, you don't want to line up 3 images lined up right next to those ads to make it look like they're related in some way. That's not acceptable. The other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to use images, titles, etc. to encourage clicks. Really bad idea. You'll see that sometimes where people will put in images thinking, oh, if I put images, right, with a click here and an arrow pointing to the ads, Google won't be able to see that. They won't see the word click on my site. I can get away with it. Really not a good idea, guys.
Yeah, because what's going to happen eventually is the advertisers are going to complain, and the clicks that come from you don't convert well. And then Google's going to look into that, and then Google's going to find out that your site has these unethical terms of service violations on your site, and they're going to ban your AdSense account.
Or they'll smart price you and you're not going to get anything for the clicks that you do get, right?
Right, which is terrible, because you can be smart priced on your whole account, not just on the site.
Yeah, it's important to remember, in general, you want to make sure that the traffic you're getting for AdSense is real search traffic that's related to the particular site that you have. You don't want to get it from social media platforms where they're not related to the site or they're not interested in the site. Ultimately, your job is to not only get them to click on ads and make you and Google money, it's to make the advertiser money. So you want the people that click on the ads to have a pretty good shot of purchasing from the advertiser you're sending them to.
Right. So the next thing here is do match or contrast your ad units to your font and color theme on your site. That's pretty important, because we see people all the time that kind of just halfway do it, where they made the background match but not the font color, or they made the font type not match but they made the background match. We use a blended approach for our ad units to our theme, and I think that's really the best way to go. But make sure you do either one or the other. Take the extra time to make sure that your theme and your ad units match up in terms of visual presentation.
Next thing we would say is do use custom channels to find which ad layout performs the best for you. And as we said, we do batch, so we batch them by month. But what this does, it allows you to find out which ad units are performing better, which ones are worse, and then across the board, if you want to make large sweeping changes, you can do that because you have large amounts of data in that data set.
Yeah, that kind of stuff gives you the data to make decisions later on. So it's very important that you get that properly tracked.
Next point is don't use more than the allowed ad blocks and link units on a page. Again, if you're using kind of an AdSense ready type theme, they're normally going to limit you. You're not going to be able to have too many, but be particularly mindful if you're using multiple posts on the home page. We've seen where that's a problem, where they'll have multiple ad blocks there, too many.
Probably one of the number one ways to get your AdSense account banned, because it's a terms of service violation.
Well, that's it for this week's heart of the episode. We're going to get right into the ninja marketing tips, tricks, and our plans for the future.
The AdSense Flippers podcast continues.
So for the second week in a row, Joe's got the ninja marketing tips that blow my mind, dude. I don't know, this is way out of my league. I don't use these. I think one of them I'm going to start using, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But hit us up, buddy. What you got?
Well, I've been doing a lot of migrations, obviously, the last few weeks, and I just had a couple of tools that helped me. The first is called whatsmydns.net. This allows you to check your DNS propagation. This is important when you move a site from one server to another, so that you actually know out there on the internet what the internet is resolving your host to. So as your IP address changes, you're going to be able to look it up using this site. Check that out, whatsmydns.net. The next one is clipboard history. This is great if you're copying and pasting a lot of information and moving it around. It allows you to go back to your last 10, 20, or 30, or however many you want to set it to, copies to the clipboard.
I like this one, man, because when I'm Control-Ving, pasting, I guess, when I'm Control-Ving onto the page, I've already copied over something that I wanted. I'm like, oh, shit, man, where'd it go? And I have to go back and find it again. I think that one would be helpful. I'll definitely check that one out.
Yeah, think about it, like some people just keep this in a notepad open and they would like go back the last 10 times.
Yeah, dude, that's me. That's totally me.
Yeah, now you have an actual program that can just go into your history. Now, the third one is called Dolphin Text Editor Menu. What this does is it allows you to do some basic sorting functions, some other control functions to text without having to put them into a spreadsheet or something like that. So you can change the case if you'd like it's all capitals and you want to make it lowercase. If you want to sort the lines, if you want to remove spaces, if you want to do text editing like that on a mass scale, you can do it with that program.
That's so funny. I've had that problem before where it's all in caps and I wanted to put it lowercase. And with this program, you can actually take like the first word of every sentence and put it all lowercase except for the first letter and that type of thing. I don't know if you've ever gone back. I've actually done this where I went back through and just retyped everything out in lowercase. I know, dude, I'm silly, right?
Yeah, I'm laughing because this tool allows you to do it in like 1 second.
Yeah, such a pain in the ass. I feel like a donkey for doing that before, dude. I'm definitely gonna use this one the next time too.
And anyway, all these tools are free. They're free open source software, so check them out.
Yeah, we'll definitely link to them in the show notes and you can take a look, see if it's useful for you. Well, that is it for this 8th episode of the AdSense Flippers podcast. I want to thank you for sticking with us all the way through. Bit of a dry episode this week, but I think it was good information, especially if you're using AdSense on a regular basis. These are the kind of things that you really need to follow, pay attention to. Yeah, and if you have any questions about layout or ad units, please put them in the comments below, and we'll get right back to you. Yeah, and make sure to check us out on Twitter at AdSense Flippers. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the AdSense Flippers podcast with Justin and Joe. Be sure to hit up AdSenseFlippers.com for more. That's AdSenseFlippers.com. Thanks for listening.